China and you look at India and you see where they're aborting female babies because that's not what they're wanting and that's not the... Did you get really loud all of a sudden? Okay. I just heard myself for the first time. Sounded like Justin up here. No? 40 million is a lot. But if you look at countries like China and India who have huge populations and they're just knocking out any females that they can get, then that's obviously going to be a big, big number. However, this statistic kind of shocked me even more than that. And this was a study done in 2017. In 2017, 18% of all pregnancies in America were aborted. 18%. Some of you are looking at me like that's not a real statistic. That's a real statistic. That's how many abortions. That's out of every 5 pregnancies, almost 1 ended in abortion. If you go to a conservative place like New York, that number goes to 31%. 1/3 of pregnancies in New York City, or New York, I think it was the state, in 2017 ended in abortion. Nearly 1 out of every 3 kids were aborted. We in America, we don't take abortion as a way to select a gender or a way to avoid having someone out of that was a result of rape, or in order to get rid of a child because of a disability or because of a physical issue. We do it just because we don't want to have a kid. We just abort as a way of birth control. That's how we operate in America. How is that right? If every child is wonderfully made by God for God, no matter the sex, no matter the disability, no matter what is going on, who are we to say that this child gets to live or this child has to die because it's going to affect me and it's going to affect my life, right? Whatever they are, whoever they are, whatever they're going to be, whatever's wrong with them, whatever gender they are, no matter what it is, they were designed specifically to glorify the Creator. And the world doesn't understand this because specific task and a very important role in this lifetime, and we just murdered them like it was nothing for birth control. That's not only a real possibility, that's probably factual, right? Think back to John chapter 9, and we talked about this story, it's been about a month ago. We talked about the blind man who was blind, and Jesus healed him, and it just blew everybody's mind, and the Pharisees could not get it together. They put this man on trial over and over and over. They went to his family's house. I made the joke that it sounded a lot like John Kavanaugh. They were just trying to make up anything they could possibly get against this guy. They could not figure out how a blind man could see, and it's not that they didn't understand it. They did not want to believe that it was Jesus. But thinking back to that story, at the very beginning of the story, he comes in and they ask, why is this man blind? Was it something his mom did? Was it something his dad did? And Jesus says, verse number 3, it was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. In America, if you were told, I remember going through the test, I'm sure y'all went through all this, they do all these tests now to tell you if something's going to be wrong with your child, and you're on pins and needles because you don't want nothing to be wrong with your child. You want your child to be healthy. You want your child to be normal and have all fingers and all toes, and Down syndrome's always a scare because they start talking about that, and you're just terrified something's going to be wrong with your child. But in so many cases in America, they come in and they tell you, hey, your child has this. Right? Your child's going to be deaf or blind, or your child's going to have Down syndrome, or your child's not going to have an arm or a leg, or your child's going to have a severe disability. And a very real option now is to abort because it's not fair to raise that child. It's not fair to raise a child in this world that's already setting out with so much against it. And what kind of quality of life would it have? And looking back at this story in John chapter 9, Think about it. And this was before technology. This was before we had special classes for blind and for deaf and all this stuff going on. Think about how inconvenient it was to be a blind person in the world. Think about how inconvenient it was to raise a blind child in a world that had no technology whatsoever, right? Think about, and I'm not trying to pretend or insinuate that I know what it's like to have a real disability or raise a child with a real disability or know what these people are up against or what these people face or the difficulties that they face. But I do understand this. God shows out the very most at our weakest points. No matter what's wrong with a child, no matter what's wrong with a baby or what they tell you is wrong with it or what's going to be wrong with it, no matter what's going on in this child's life, that child was created to glorify God. That child was raised, was created with a specific purpose, and if it's given the chance, has the chance to glorify God with his or her life. So who are we to say that child can't glorify God, or that child doesn't deserve to live, or that child doesn't deserve a chance? The greatest way that we can glorify God is with our weaknesses, because that's where he looks the strongest. Why was this blind man born blind? So that the works of God might be displayed in him. How many people, and we talked about this when we covered this text, how many people's lives were changed when Jesus made a blind man see? Not only were the people around him changed, of course the blind man was a believer of Jesus like that, right? No problem whatsoever. Had no question in his life who Jesus was. The people who saw him, his family, even the Pharisees began to see something fishy there. Even the ones who hated Jesus the most were having a hard time on that day, and they tried really hard to prove that Jesus was a phony, and yet they couldn't. Some things happen in this life, and are they fair? They're not fair. Some things happen that are difficult. Some things happen that we have to ask ourselves, why? Why did this happen to a child? Why was a child born this way? Why was a child developed this way? If God creates everything, if God is over everything, if God's forming this little tiny human in the womb to be formed like him, why would he give him a disadvantage or her a disadvantage? Why would he create a child with a disability? We don't get to ask those questions. They're not for us to understand. They're not for us we don't have to understand. All we need to understand is that God can and will be glorified in any situation. Bad things happen because of sin. We cause that. We don't get to choose which child lives and dies. Now, so we've covered why is abortion bad. And I don't think any of you were going to make the case that abortion was good in here. I don't think that I'm talking to the targeted audience of people that don't think that it's a murder, or that it's not slapping the Creator in the face, or that it's not attacking a relationship between God and a living, breathing human being. And I don't think that there's a huge number of people in churches. Now, I'm sure that number would surprise a lot of us. People in church that are having abortions or anything like that. So I don't think that we as a church are retreating when it comes to actually having abortions, but here's where we're failing at, all right? And we're talking, the theme of this whole study is, where are we retreating, and how can we be risking our lives? How can we be risking our lives for the gospel and the expansion of the gospel? We're not retreating by having abortions like crazy in the church, but who is standing up for the unborn right now? Because if the parents are not doing it, if the parents are willingly and happily giving up a child's life so that they can live the way that they want to live, it's not the parents. The parents are not standing up for the child. The parents are not standing up for the unborn. Is the church standing up for the unborn? What have we done in the past? Now, right now, in the church, there's murmurs and excitement because the Supreme Court showed out in Texas, and everybody thinks, well, the Supreme Court's about to overthrow abortion, all this stuff. I promise you that's not going to happen without somebody somewhere standing up and supporting that. What voice has the church made? We talk about it in here, but what do you say out there? What are you doing to stand up for the unborn? It's not a political debate. We talked about that last week when we started covering this topic, because I promise you, this is not a topic that you guys want to sit in here and listen to, and it's not a topic I want to talk about on Wednesday nights. I'm trying to get past this one because it's not fun, but it's the truth. And those are usually the least fun to talk about and to discuss. But what are we doing as a church to stand up for the unborn? What are we doing to risk it when it comes to standing up and literally saving millions of unborn children every year? So next week, we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at what can we do? How are we retreating, and how can we do a better job of risking what we have in order to stand up for those who have nobody that's currently standing up for them? Brother Jimmy, will you close us in prayer tonight?